Welcome back to the Meeting Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Frampton. Today, we have a super special guest. Katie is here, currently the SVP of Sales Bench. Katie, welcome to the show.
Well, pumped to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been going over on this show so far, Katie, is really diving behind the LinkedIn profiles of some of the top sales leaders in the industry. When folks look at your LinkedIn profile, your success, you of all people, I feel like it's hard to imagine the adversity that you might have faced in your career. But I know everybody has had those moments in their career where things haven't always been easy and up and to the right. Curious, what are some moments maybe in your climb from the days at Human when you went from an SDR to a director of sales that there was some challenging moments or struggles that you had to go through?
Jesus, if anybody looks at my profile or looks at my career and thinks that it was easy or that it was all sunshine and rainbows, like y'all got it completely wrong or twisted, man. There were so many hard parts. One, when I became an SDR, I took a step back in my career to land that role because it was the only way I could get into the company. That was a challenge. I had an AE that I was supporting and that wasn't a good closer, yet I had to keep lobbing things over to him, hoping that he would close until I just took it. Like he was actually too hungover one morning to take a demo and he asked me to reschedule it. And I said, yeah, sure. And then I just took it and closed it. I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. I remember when this was a low one. I haven't shared this story with many people ever. It was right after I got promoted to director. And I had been fighting tooth and nail to get everybody raises. That we were just paying way too far under market. People were getting ready to leave, all this. I fought tooth and nail and I did it. I got them raises and we're talking some people got $10,000, $15,000 like increases to their OTEs. And I rolled it out with kind of like the new expectations of the org, right? Like, all right, we were able to do this. Like, this is how we're going to operate moving forward. And everybody was like, raw and everything. And it was a week later, people were already not doing the things that they had agreed to do. And it broke me. I was like, not just angry, like I was hurt. It was like, yo, like I fought so hard to get you more money. I fought so hard and stood up for you and defended you and fought for you behind closed doors. And then y'all couldn't even do this. I was like, if I'm not the leader y'all want to follow, then just let me know and like I'll walk. But I was like welling up. I was so hurt by the fact like I tried to give so much to get them there. Like that was a low point for sure. So I guess I'll pause there. I was on the road to directorship and there was plenty of low points as a VP, a Snack Nation and so on. But like that's one that like really stick with me is I had fought so hard to get them more money and raises and that I just felt betrayed when it was like, then you couldn't even do the small things I was asking you to do like within your role. Like that one got me.
And where do you think that disconnect came from? Because I was actually in a similar position where I was working my ranks at a director level role and we were paying probably 40% under market value. I feel like we went through a period of time in software where like salary expectations just went through the roof and level setting that. I feel like my team almost felt finally we're getting what we paid rather than having the sense of, oh, now I have a shot to earn some serious money. Like I'm going to put in that extra effort. I'm going to go the extra mile. Like, where do you feel like that sprouted from on your side?
Oh, there was no disconnect. They knew. They knew what they were supposed to be doing and what the asks were. And it wasn't like I was asking them to do that much more. It wasn't, and also too, for the most part, it wasn't like OTE, like just variable increases. Like I got big base increases as well. So this wasn't like just like dangling the carrot. Oh, if you go do this, because then it is. People do sometimes feel like, yeah, great, but now I got to close twice as much to make that. Like, that's not really a raise. This was like base raises. Like this was like, hey, like I went fought to go get it. And it, to me, there actually wasn't a disconnect. It was actually a very powerful learning lesson on how people operate and how people think. Money does not drive most people. It does not. Like if money truly motivated people to do the right things, we wouldn't need leaders. That's my firm belief. They do the right things. They wouldn't need leaders. We wouldn't need quotas. We wouldn't need any of that because money, the more they do, the more they would make. It'd be simple. It was a very big learning lesson that money doesn't motivate. It was a very big learning lesson that people always relapse to what they know and what they're comfortable with. It was a very big learning lesson also to not take things personally as a leader. Like what people do is what people do. I can't be like, I knew I did what was right and I knew I did what I could to help them. So things like that, whereas a big learning lesson on people more than anything.
Yeah. Where do you go from there? Is it something where you reevaluate around what their motivations are and double down on those new things? Or what was your like next step after facing that adversity?
The first one, like I said, I bared it all to them, right? I was like, I'm hurt by this, y'all. Like I was very vulnerable in that moment. I thought this is what y'all needed and wanted, and I thought I could take y'all at your word. I honored my word. I fought for this to get you. If you won't do this for me, if you won't like, then I don't know who to put in this seat for y'all to follow. And so if you don't want to be here, or you don't want to work with me or for me, just let me know. And if it's all y'all, I'll leave. And I was like, if y'all, I'll leave. I'm not asking y'all to leave. Like I'll be the one that leaves. But if you're going to be here, I need you to recommit to what we talked about here. And that was the theme. And literally everybody recommitted after that. And almost everybody was like, thank you for that. Like we needed to see that versus just like cracking the whip and everything around it. And then it was though, like the dynamic shifted very quickly from me trying to earn their trust to them earning back my trust because they broke my trust there. And we were very clear on what the expectations were and how we were going to measure it and also why they mattered, right? Like it wasn't just BS stuff to do. It was like, hey, like we have to elevate as an org. We have to achieve things that we haven't achieved before. These are the things required to do it. Right, and that was a big part of it, but also that it changed, like, who I hired for, right? Like, the questions that I'd ask people in the interview process changed throughout all of it, and it was a turning point for that org, right? And things did get better after that, but that one hit me. It really did. Because it was so different from my expectation, which is also a learning lesson, right? Like, in your head, you're like, "I got them what they needed. I got them what they wanted. They're gonna be so happy. They're gonna be so grateful." Right. Cause also too, it was a surprise. It wasn't something where whatever else when I stood up in front of like, hey, y'all, I got something for you. No one knew it was coming. Like there's all those things. And then to have them just go right back to what they were doing before, like it hurt. They did. But it was a big learning lesson for everybody involved.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned that there's some specific questions that you ask now in the hiring process. Myself, I've always been a believer that you can find folks that are more money motivated. Not everybody's motivated by money. And there's some interview questions that I like to ask that help me determine what they're actually motivated on. 'Cause at the end of the day, I want them to be motivated by something that I feel like I can help them actually drive, like I can help them propelled to. Curious, what are some of your interview questions that help you understand if a candidate's going to fit with like more of the culture that you're driving at the organizations that you've led?
So it shifted far more to behavioral because here's also the honest truth. Most people don't know what motivates them. If they did, this world would be a very different place.
Yeah.
And so what happens, right? When we ask people the classic question, like in the interview process, like what motivates you, you tend to get the same 3 to 4 answers. Now you're talking to salespeople. So a lot of them will say money, liars. It's not, it is not. And when you find one, a truly money motivated individual is the easiest person to manage in the world. Literally all you have to do with a truly money motivated individual is make sure they're not cutting corners. That's it. Right. Because also someone who's money motivated, sometimes they will try to cut corners to make money. Outside of that, like they just go and grow. You don't have to do anything with them. They do just fine. And they represent anywhere from 3 to 7% of people that are truly money motivated. For all the rest, it's actually not even about motivation anymore. It's about discipline, right? So I'm asking questions like, when have you stuck with something longer than people expected you to? When did you stick with something where other people gave up earlier? Give me a time where you followed instructions for a consistent period of time while you were learning, right? Like I'm focused more on the behaviors and the motivations because they don't know. They don't know what motivates them more often than not. And so they're going to give you a boilerplate answer. And in sales, we love to hear that money motivated I have led now well over 1,000 sales reps in my career. Anyone listening right now, go double commissions and tell me if production goes up 2x. Go do it. Go double commissions tomorrow and tell me if the next 90 days your results 2x. Everybody listening knows that would not happen. And that should tell us everything we need to know about how compensation actually drives behavior change.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's something that we blanket think about around, hey, like what's your underlying motivation? Because it's not money. It's usually something beyond that, even if they are money motivated, that small percentage. I'm curious from your perspective on the other side, though, the discipline. One thing we've noticed with the folks that we're interviewing a part of this podcast that have seen that trajectory go from SDR to head of sales, senior sales leader, most of them have stayed in one company for 3+ years, at least early on in their career. After they jump around, go to different, more senior level roles, because there isn't that trajectory shift. But is that a pattern that you think is happening where they're able to have the discipline to grind it out and stay in that company through the hard times? Or is that just a coincidence for the folks that see that trajectory?
I think you can have a little bit of survivor's bias there, right? Of like the ones that like made it, how and why did they make it that long? I'm not sure how to answer the question there because it depends again back to what they're seeking. The stats are out there, right? Job hoppers make more over their career than people that are there, but also people that stay longer tend to have more of a leadership mindset. That's the only reason you do stay longer. There aren't many people that love to stay as an AE at the same company for 4 years. So especially with the generations coming up more, there's a novelty desire where you go from SDR for 2 years, AE for 2 years, manager for 2 years, director for 2 years, VP for 2 years. That's how you can have an 8-year swath. But that only represents 5% of people. There's only so many manager spots, even fewer director spots, one VP spot. And that assumes that the company even makes it that far. So that's another thing I don't think people talk about enough is why don't we see more 5-year stints? Not all startups make it 5 years. Let's just call that one out. So I think that's how I look at it, right? What's interesting, like within my career, I only have one blip. Service time is my only 1 year blip. Human Disconnect Nation was 5 years. Prior to that, Easy Fitness was 5 years. Like after that, Servant Patient Pop was 3.5, coming up on 4 years. And if it weren't for COVID, I probably still would have been there doing what I do. So I'm not flipping, but I'm always moving up in these jobs, which makes it easier to stay longer.
Yeah, no, totally fair. One other thing that we like to do on the Meeting Mastery podcast is understand what you believe is critical for sellers today. Curious, like if you were to recommend something to new sellers, maybe first time AEs, what do you think that they need to be doing on their calls to be successful during this call?
Ooh, during this climate, I would say the most important thing in this climate is to be a true guide to your prospects, right? And sellers forget this all the time. You sell this product all day, every day. Your buyers buy it once. And I think there's just so many assumptions that salespeople have about the buyers that they know how to buy. They may have never bought this type of product before, or they're taking over for someone who bought the last one. They don't know how to buy. And so being a guide in this process, I think is really key, especially in the times that we're in. This is where the things like the jolt effect and like that come into play. Not only have to guide them, but you have to see like, where can you remove risk? Lean into the fear versus being like pulling away from it. Lean into the objections, use the objection as the reason and connecting those dots. I think that would be the biggest for me, man, is be a guide, help them buy. What are the next steps? Where do companies normally involve legal? What are the questions that the CFO is going to ask? Give them that FAQ. Give it to them. You know what the CFO is going to ask them, and know the CFO is probably not going to get on the phone with you. So you better have an amazing checklist for that CFO to go through that will answer the questions they're going to ask them, right? So like really being that guide would be my number one tip.
Even if a buyer has bought something 3 months ago, you still need to guide them through that process. It might have changed entirely at their company, right? Ensure that you're asking the questions and not just making that underlying assumption like, like they bought X 7 months ago. I'm good. I don't need to worry about this stuff. Totally agree. Katie, really appreciate you being on the Meeting Mastery podcast. It was great having you. And thanks again, everybody, for having me.